Welcome back to Live Like It Matters, the podcast where I just make it up as we go and bring in people that I really care about, that I trust, value, and love. And this month for October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I decided that there's a lot of things about breast cancer that people are so unaware of. So I'm bringing in specialists and people that I go to for my information and sources to come on in and help us cut through the noise and figure out what really matters. So today I'm so excited to have Dena Goldberg, Dena DNA, as many of you know her as. This is so fun. Welcome.
I know. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to your space.
Oh, yeah. Well, Drew's space, but it does feel like a shared home now. It's really nice. And each time they set it up a little bit differently. Last time the trees were really getting in Glozel's face. It was hilarious if you watched that episode. But I'm so excited to talk with you, especially for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as I'm calling it, Unawareness Month, because there are so many areas to breast cancer that people aren't aware of. And Definitely. I think that a lot of times in October, as we do get things so pink-washed and all that, I want to believe that aside from, of course, some corporate profit things and marketing and all that, the majority of people just really don't know what to do. And they want to help and they want to understand. And I thought, what better thing to help people understand more of than genetics? Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you to introduce, kind of your background and why you got into such a specific, really important field.
Yeah. Okay. So I originally started in genetics because my sister was born with a chromosome abnormality, and I've been interested in genetics since I was 6 years old, basically. I wanted to be a performer, actually. So, this is my thing,
Yeah,
But having a mom who's a doctor, a dad who's a biomedical engineer is kind of, pushed into science. And so I went to school for biology in undergrad, worked in a genetics lab doing more ancestry stuff and anthropology. And then my first job out of school was in a breast cancer research lab in San Francisco out of undergrad. And I realized very quickly that lab life was not my thing, and I wanted to see patients. And so I went back to grad school, and it was, between that and med school, and my mom, who's a physician, was like, don't do med school. It just was, she didn't believe it was worth it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so because I'm a creative, I wanted to do something that really involved genetics in an up-and-coming or just growing way. And so genetic counseling was really the best of all of those worlds. And I went to grad school and originally thought I was going to do pediatric genetics and help other families like mine who had an individual with a disability or a genetic condition. But then when I graduated, there was this amazing role at UCSF in San Francisco in the Cancer Genetics and Prevention program. And I started to get really interested in it when studying for boards, and I had that lab experience anyway. So all that culminated together and put me in this cancer genetics role. And then since then, it's just, I've been on a roll, doing lots of stuff in the research realm, having my peers affected in some way, and being able to help people in so many different ways. Also being Ashkenazi Jewish, it's a big topic in that community. So I am a specialist in hereditary cancer syndromes. I left clinic and started doing content creation a few years into my career, and then kind of went back to clinic and have been doing telehealth and started my own private practice. But this whole time I've been doing my Dena DNA, public education. So basically doing things like this where I can come on and talk to people and educate them about genetics in a way that is more entertaining than usual. And but then also be able to still see patients and stay in touch with all the science, and that's ever changing.
Yeah. Well, I've told you this before, I'm so grateful and glad that you have that side of you that wants to do content and all that, because it is so important that people hear that information on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And, a lot of things like when getting diagnosed with cancer, other things, not everyone, and there's no right or wrong, right? Some of us are comfortable, some of us aren't. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really great if you are to be able to spread that knowledge. I mean, we've talked multiple times, and I still have so many burning questions to ask, because there's so much to it. I know that when I was first diagnosed, the first thing everyone starts asking is, do you have a family history? Are you BRCA positive? Because everyone knows BRCA, right? And I know that there's so much more beyond that. My answer to all that is no, other than being an Ashkenazi Jew. That's the only, I guess, genetic, right? Technically.
A risk factor.
Risk factor.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop even trying to use the words and let you use them. But so say I am back 4 years ago, my initial diagnosis, or someone going through that right now, what should they make sure from a genetic counseling standpoint that they get tested for and get done?
Yeah, so you mentioned BRCA1 and 2, or what people call the BRCA genes. Those are definitely some of the high risk and most common genes that we look at and have looked at historically, but there are a whole handful of other breast cancer genes, and then there are genes that are associated with other cancers that may have some overlap in the breast cancer space as well. So I recommend everyone does a large panel. It's the same price whether you do 1 gene or 100 genes, the way that pricing works out, and it's typically covered by insurance if you have a cancer diagnosis. So it's pretty easy to do. You can do it with saliva. You don't even need to have your blood drawn. And so I recommend anybody who's newly diagnosed make sure they have a full panel of all of those cancer-associated genes. And it's also important to remember that that's germline testing. So that's looking at the DNA we were born with, which is different than tumor testing, which is looking at the genetics of a tumor for treatment decisions. So those are both genetic tests, but one of them is what we call germline, and the other somatic. So just looking at the changes that happen in that clump of cells that caused it to become a cancer. So those are actually two very different types of genetic tests.
So is that I'm HER2 positive? Is that the somatic?
That's a hormone receptor test. So it's not necessarily genetic, but it's looking at the receptors on the surface of the tumor to see how to treat it, to help your doctors
decide
understand
which treatment or chemo.
So there's a lot of tools that oncologists can use to understand somebody's tumor, because every tumor is so unique to the person. And so genetics is one of those tools. But what I do is really looking at someone's risk to try and get ahead of cancer before somebody develops it, if possible, or to try and understand the why someone developed it. And in that case, sometimes there are other things to look out for, or there are very specific treatments that will work better on that person's tumor than the generic treatment. So that's the germline or the hereditary cancer testing.
Do you find that a lot of the times it's not proactively offered and patients need to ask for it?
Yeah, unfortunately. It should. I think it's getting more popular now. The labs are doing a pretty good job of marketing it, and when a celebrity comes out saying that they've had a mutation found, then oftentimes people will think more about it. Because the price really lowered in the last few years, it's easier to get, but still the majority of people who fit criteria for getting it covered by their insurance are not actually getting testing or getting referred to get testing, just because there are so many things our healthcare providers have to remember. And to remember the exact criteria of who should go in is very difficult for a lot of people. So ideally, your provider would tell you, oh, you fit criteria, you should go see a genetic counselor, or you should have this test. But realistically, that's just not happening. So,
and realistically, everyone should just do it. Right?
Well, so it depends who you ask, right?
Okay.
So most people in my profession will say if you have a family history or if you have some combination of risk factors that you should do it. Personally, though, I think that family history is not the best tool, because a lot of people don't really know their family history, right? You can be adopted, you could be donor conceived, the person you think is your father may not be your father. There's lots of or culturally your family didn't share information, or they didn't have access to healthcare. There's so many reasons that people don't know their family history. And so we're really doing a disservice to those patients who don't truly know their history, because they don't realize that they're at an increased risk. So I do personally believe that everybody should be offered this testing, especially because the price has come down. There are definitely colleagues of mine that will disagree, but the kind of concept of population genetic testing has become really a lot more standard, and there are certain healthcare systems that will offer everybody that walks in the door the same test, which really makes it more equitable, because we're not discriminating against somebody based on that known family history or other risk factors, or the quality of their previous care. So population testing, I personally believe is the future, which is why when I started my private practice, anyone that wants testing, I am there to guide them, because I think people will go out and seek it, and they may fall prey to some of these vulnerable, not so great tests, and I'd rather they do it through me so I can guide them and make sure they're getting appropriate testing.
And you've mentioned a couple of times about the price going down, and I remember this from times of talking of, like, even if it's not covered by insurance, what was it, like $250?
$250, yeah, most commercial laboratories, yes.
And that really blew my mind, because a lot of times we're like, we just assume if it's not covered by insurance, it's something that's like thousands of dollars and we can't get it.
Right.
But a lot of these tests are really inexpensive, and I know there's a ton of nonprofits and resources that, even if you go to wegothis.org, our new resource directory has a filter for financial support.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like a $250 request for that is pretty easy, you know, for, I don't want to say easy, but like, it's something that's what a lot of organizations like ours are built for, is making sure that people get the information that's important to them.
Yeah, definitely. And as a genetic counselor, oftentimes, like, I can get it covered for people that need financial aid, and the labs also have financial aid available, because nobody wants cost to be a reason that somebody can't get this information that's potentially life-saving. So yeah, I mean, that's so cool though that you have that. And, you know.
It was really important to me that we just added in this resource directory a few months ago, in addition to a recommendation shop. And from the beginning, when I first got diagnosed, it was like you get that copy sheet of paper of some resources. And now that I know so many nonprofits and what's out there, I just wouldn't have known about them.
Sure.
And so we really use the new revamp of our website to like filter everything. So we have like over 100 orgs on there right now. We're always just taking in more and then tagging them to where people can find it. So yes, some might be specific to just breast cancer or blood cancer, but some might be nationwide or local, or there's so many things.
That's so cool, because I can imagine that's very overwhelming for someone who's newly diagnosed.
Yeah.
I don't even know all these organizations. I feel like there's a new one every day that comes across, you know, my feed or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice.
I mean, I'm going on, like when people inquire, because we don't really have like a pool of money for financial support. And so I'll go in and see, based on where they're located and other stuff, like, do we have someone? And then if not, it's like, okay, let's keep an eye out. We need more financial resources in Kentucky, or like whatever that might be. And I felt like when you got handed a paper, or if someone just says like, hey, make sure to get genetic testing.
Yeah.
Like, they're kind of just giving you homework. Like, it's like this burden. You're like, well, where do I go? And all that. It's like, well, if you have questions, you go to Dena DNA.
Yes.
Yeah. What other, advice or things do you see pop up a lot, particularly in breast cancer, that might, surprise people based on assumptions?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that if you have been tested more than 5 years ago with genetic testing, that you should recontact the person who tested you or seek a genetic counselor to update your testing, because there are new genes that have come out that have been added to these panels. There are the technology has improved, and so there are people that previously tested negative that when they do an update test will actually test positive, which really changes care. So that's another thing, is that even though the genes we were born with don't change, they're the same from birth to death, the way that we look at them and our interpretation of the results may change. And so that's something I think not everyone realizes, because you think, oh, you only do one genetic test, your whole life. The second thing that I hear all the time is, oh, I did the genetic testing when I was pregnant. But that is such a different test, right? So genetic testing really encompasses, all that word means is looking at our genetic material, and there's so many things to look at and so many ways to look at it. And so when you're pregnant, you usually do carrier screening to see if you carry anything that you and your partner can pass down to a child. But also you may do like non-invasive prenatal testing, which is the gender test that a lot of people know it as. But really it's looking at common trisomy. So looking at chromosome differences in the fetus by taking mom's blood. Very different tests than a cancer panel, right? And so all of these are considered genetic tests, but they're so different. And so you have to know what you're testing for and make sure that your testing is up to date. So if you've only had testing during pregnancy, that is not going to be your cancer panel.
That's really good to know, especially because I feel like it is on the rise, people getting, I mean, I got diagnosed the year after giving birth. It's, you know, and so it's understandable that people would be like, well, I just did all that, you know? But the first thing you said too, I think is a real common theme right now across a lot of things. Like if you use that to compare to, we're not going to be on one type of treatment for breast cancer forever, right? They evolve and like we learn new things. And,
exactly.
you know, we didn't used to know as much about the different types as we do now, you know, and all these things. And I think that the ever evolving piece of medicine is something that I really understand more, having like the idea that I'm living with cancer for 4 years now and continually, but I never would have understood that before. Before I would have been like, why don't we have a cure for cancer? Why, you know, and once you're in it, you understand like, oh wow, there are so many different things. The way that someone could have the exact same diagnosis as me, but be like BRCA positive, and we would get treated differently.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, I get why you're so into it. Like I get like kind of geeking out on it too. I'm like, this is like, it's pretty cool how much information we can know, but then understanding that we're limited to what we know right now. And that's why continuing. So if I'm 4 years in, I did the screening when I got diagnosed with cancer. Nothing came back positive there. So like next year, would you recommend that I get screened again?
Yeah. And the 5 is like not a magic number, just like a way to think about that, how much technology changes in 5 years. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can totally look at your panel and I can make sure that all the genes are up to date. Because a lot of times people would have a much smaller one, or they'd only look at the high risk breast cancer genes, but not the more moderate risk ones, which are still important to know. So just making sure that your panel's up to date. A lot of the panels now are like upwards of like over 70 genes, and it used to be like it started out with just BRCA1 and 2, then it was only a handful more, and then it was 30, and now like there's more than 70. And so because we again can test them all for the same price, a lot of people will decide to look at more just so they have more information. Yeah.
Is there any reason to not?
Yeah. So there's 2 reasons that people choose not to. So one is the worrying about discrimination. So people are very worried about how it will affect their insurance. But in the United States, at both the state and federal level, there are protections against genetic discrimination. So if somebody is unaffected, and by the way, this really only works if you have a cancer diagnosis, then there's different types of discrimination someone may face. Okay. But when you don't, and you're just you have a risk factor, or like an inherited risk, but you haven't developed any symptoms, then you're covered under the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, or GINA, and that prohibits health insurance and employers from discriminating against somebody based on their genetic status, but it doesn't apply to life insurance at this time. Okay. So usually I'll tell all of my patients before you do this testing to apply for life insurance if it's something that somebody was interested in. Unfortunately, that's going to be harder for somebody who's had a cancer diagnosis, right? But if it's before one, then that's something that I always tell people, and it's, I think, really important to know that, right? Yeah. And you can always take out a plan, and then if you're negative, you can cancel it. But then that way, if you're positive if you're positive and you've already taken out a plan, you're locked in. So that's kind of a little trick. But your employers and your health insurance, it is illegal for them to discriminate. So that's one of the main reasons people decide not to do that. The second is something called a variant of uncertain significance. So we have a lot of variation in our genes. There's no perfect version of any gene. And for the most part, we know which ones are disease causing and which ones are just normal variation. But sometimes there will be a version that's less common of a gene. And if that's the case, then we don't necessarily know what that means. And most of the time it's just normal variation. But that can cause anxiety in some people. And the more genes you test, the more likely you are to have one of these like inconclusive results. But I think that if you have proper counseling and you're working with an expert, then typically like that's not an issue for my patients, because they know that most of these are normal variation and there's ways to follow those variants over time. So that's really the second reason why somebody may not test.
That's super helpful. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm going to touch on the life insurance thing, because I haven't talked about these things in a while, but my former life, I was a financial advisor and licensed in insurance. And my husband, Eric, and I, we have life insurance policies, luckily, that we got, way before the cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of reasons why I think, people listening should consider looking into that. There's a lot of different types. So like you got to talk to people that you trust. But, we did a very basic like 20-year term policy with the option to renew, which means that, you can convert it maybe later to another policy, but you don't have to be retested. So even though I now have cancer, I'm good. But also if it did come down to like that I was terminal within a year, I'm not right now, but there are typically accelerated death benefits that can help pay off a lot of debt.
Oh, wow.
So it depends on the policy, and that's something to look at when you look into it. But for an example, like a $500,000 policy, you might be able to take out, say, like a $250,000 accelerated death benefit.
Oh, wow.
So like where, if you are considered terminal, and you may or may not pass that time, but like that your doctor says that can make a huge difference on the end of someone's life.
Wow.
So these are things that, and to give you an idea, like it doesn't have to be super expensive with a term policy. We pay like $40 or $50 a month for it.
Yeah.
I'm not selling you anything. I'm not licensed anymore. So none of this is non-compliant. But just as a personal thing, I definitely recommend people look into that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great that you let people know that. And being aware of stuff up front is important, especially like amidst a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. And it really makes it hard. Once you have any diagnosis, they make it very hard to get a plan. And that can be anything. Like they can really find, like they squeeze everything that they can out sometimes to deny somebody or to raise their rates, unfortunately. So then you have to, you probably know, then you have to shop around, you have to try different plans. It's not the best, but hopefully in the future there'll be some sort of protection for people that maybe have a genetic risk factor, but I don't know, who knows.
So for now you'll never be younger than you are right now. And and most likely not healthier, just because of like how they consider age and all those factors. So definitely something to look into before you would necessarily think to look into it. All right, well, let's pause from the fun stuff, but in the weeds. I want to know more about you. Like what other things are you working on right now? I saw some really fun footage of something you got brewing. Do you want to share on that?
Yeah. Okay. So something I realized just from doing a lot of stuff with patient groups is that it's really hard once you are diagnosed with a genetic variant, or what we call a pathogenic variant or mutation. It's really hard sometimes to find information on what that means. And so although I would hope that everybody can go see someone like me, a cancer genetic counselor that can walk you through it, what I've realized is that's not really realistic. There's only 5,000 genetic counselors in North America. That number's growing, but only a subset of them are cancer specialists. Only a subset of them are working in clinics. So there's not enough of us to really go around. And so what I realized was that there's some resources out there, but where do people go for education? A lot of times it's social media, particularly YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. So I decided that I wanted to produce a series that's basically the education I would give to my patients when they're diagnosed with each genetic syndrome, so that they can watch that and then give them resources of where to go based on that syndrome. Because a lot of the information online is written for a scientist or a healthcare provider, but it's not really for patients. And the stuff that is for patients isn't that detailed. And so because that is my expertise, because I have been working in this field now for a decade, I know a lot of like random resources that aren't well advertised, I decided to put together this series. So I'm actually currently looking for funding for it.
Okay.
But because right now I'm producing it all myself and it takes so long. Luckily I have the skills. I can edit and film and write and whatever. But once I get funding, it will be so much faster. So on Hereditary Cancer Awareness Week, which is the week before October, I'm going to be releasing the first episode, which is
so exciting.
BRCA1 and 2. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And so it will be this place for when people get diagnosed, maybe with a provider that's not a genetics expert, and they Google it. I'm hoping that they'll find my video so that it's good information. It's based on the NCCN guidelines, so the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, and other vetted medical resources resources that I would use in clinic, but in a way that patients can understand and really make it relatable. And so I'm really excited about that series because I'm realizing that there's a lot of genes out there that really just don't have information or that have a lot of conflicting information, and I want to make it clear for everybody. So that'll be my hereditary cancer series.
Oh, I love that. Well, congratulations. And
thank you.
You all heard, if anyone's interested in funding.
Yes.
But I could picture the way you were saying, like it being overly scientific or not detailed enough. And like that huge gap in the middle. I think that's great. And an area that we talk about genetics a lot. I feel like it comes up a lot, but not in a necessarily educated way. It's just like what we're hearing or what we think we understand. So.
Yeah, and whenever I hear some of these genes mentioned in the media, a lot of times there's some misinformation that's said after that, right? And so I want to be able to make sure that people like have just vetted accurate information.
I love that. I think of that a lot, like when unfortunately like celebrities or people pass away from breast cancer, I always am like trying to figure out like what type they had or other things. And it's never out there unless they shared it somewhere. But typically it's just people understand that it's breast cancer. Yeah. And I think that's like a gap in why there is so much unawareness because we're not really talking about these terms like HER2 positive or triple negative or hormone positive unless you're being diagnosed.
Yeah. Which makes sense because that's a lot of detail. And I think most people know the word breast cancer, but they stop at that and they don't, you don't really, unless you know someone very close to you, you don't really know, or you work in the field, you don't know that much more about it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It makes sense. But then, of course, for the community, it's so valuable, that information.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same way. When I hear that a celebrity got diagnosed with a cancer, especially at a young age, I'm like, oh my God, do they have a hereditary syndrome? Because if they do, maybe they will share and they can share their experience and they will help all these other people get tested.
Yeah.
Which is actually part of the reason that I started my concierge practice, is because I wanted to work with people who had higher influence that were able to use their voice to then educate the public. And so I've been able to do that once so far, where I had a patient who I actually knew kind of from social media, but from another group. And when she got her diagnosis of a BRCA mutation, she was in to get her surgeries immediately. For her, that was the right decision. And then she shared her story in Newsweek less than a month later, and then made a whole really successful podcast series about it, and really shared her experience with me, which was really helpful too, because it helped others see how they could get genetic testing in a way that was, best for them. So I love when people with any type of voice or influence share their hereditary cancer, experience.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What do you like to do for fun outside of the genetic stuff?
Yeah, actually, another thing, I've thought about doing this. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but it's a joke. The only thing I love more than DNA is DIY. So I love crafting. I love doing things myself, with my hands. And so I get obsessed with different crafts for a while. So just I'm literally anything in crafting. And then I love fantasy books. I love my dog. I have a baby who takes up a lot of my time, toddler now. Yeah. And I love to garden. That's another thing. I love gardening. And I raise butterflies. So
I saw that recently, you posting that. That is so cool.
Thank you.
So because recently we had a thing at Ellie's school, with the butterflies, and she loved it. We got to bring in Q-tips with sugar water to get them to come over. Yeah. So what is raising butterflies?
Well, yeah. So I raise specifically monarchs. So I actually have this background where I studied biology in undergrad. I lived in the Amazon and the Galapagos, and I studied entomology. I was really interested in insects. Yeah. So I have the whole naturalist background that no one knows about.
And you thought you weren't going to work in science.
Yeah. Yeah. This was definitely, pointing in that direction. But I've been always really interested in Lepidoptera, which is the butterflies and moths. And anyway, so when I came to California and saw monarchs, I don't remember what got me started. I think it was a COVID hobby. Mm-hmm. But I realized that, that they have one host plant. It's the milkweed. And if you know how to recognize milkweed, then you can look for eggs on the milkweed. It's really easy once you train your eye to do it.
Okay.
And so I would go out, and if I saw milkweed in a parking lot or in a random place and I saw an egg, I would collect it and I would bring it. So they're much less likely to survive outside because of natural predators and because of deforestation. So I would bring it inside because I think it's like by 80%. They're 80% more likely to survive if you rear them and raise them inside. So what that means is I would take the egg in, and then I would they would hatch. I would feed them more milkweed leaves until they became really fat caterpillars and made a chrysalis, and then they would hatch, and then I would release them outside. So
wow.
So it's like you get to watch the whole process, and it is so fascinating. Metamorphosis and insects, just if you look at them under a microscope, they're like little works of art. Lots of different insects are, and so to watch that is so magical each time. And like monarchs are just so beautiful. Their chrysalises are so, there's like real gold on there. That's like a very natural metallic gold.
Oh, wow, I didn't
know
that.
Yeah, I'll have you come over and see next time.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah. So I have like all this equipment. Every year it grows. I planted a milkweed garden and then other butterfly host plants. So I have swallowtails, and I have like lots of different other types of butterflies that come. But the monarch thing it's part hobby, but also part conservation, because they're more likely to survive and then go on and reproduce. So yeah.
I mean, you're really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's really neat. I love that.
Thanks. They're kind of like you're not supposed to say spirit animal, but like I don't know what another word for that is. My sign. So they always land on me too when I'm out. So I feel like
they know you're like one of them.
Yeah, I'm like a mama. Yeah.
You're an ally.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, so the last time I recorded like a bunch of these episodes in a row, the main topic I just came in with was asking people like about a crazy story or a crazy idea that they've had. Mm-hmm. I feel like you had to have had some crazy ideas, because like, and the way I initially thought of that, just to give you some context, is a lot of things like starting a nonprofit during chemo, or all these things people might think are like crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll call them crazy ideas to make other people feel comfortable. But I don't actually think they're crazy at all. Like, this is just who I am. And I have a feeling it's who you are too.
Yeah, I have a number of them, but I have one that's like really obscure. It has nothing to do with my professional
role. I love
it.
Let's go.
Okay, so I don't know if I've told you this. So when I lived in San Francisco and I was a dog mom, I was really obsessed with my dog and would go to the dog park every day. And I'm also really good at photography. That's been like a hobby of mine for a long time.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. I have a studio at home now, but I have always just loved like wildlife and nature photography that goes along with having lived in Ecuador. And anyway, my dog is this amazing rescue dog, and I don't know how, but I somehow taught him to pose. And I was joking around with someone at the dog park that I was a crazy Jewish dog mom. No, wait. Yeah, crazy. So then we were like talking about how there's actually this calendar called Nice Jewish Boys that they used to sell at Urban Outfitters. And we were like, okay, but like who really wants a calendar of random boys? Yeah. And we're like, it would be so much better if it was dogs. And so then we're like, we should create a nice Jewish dog calendar. And we were kind of joking, but kind of not. And so that night, I don't even know what I did. I went back and I was like, how would I do this? And I found that they had an online course in dog photography and like wildlife photography. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't even remember why, but I was like, yeah, I want to try this. Yeah. So I learned on the course how to use strobe lighting, which freezes motion. And so it makes a very clear picture of moving, subjects, aka like animals. And then basically learned how to edit in a way that made it so beautiful and so clear and high resolution. So anyway, me and this friend, Rachel, we decided that we would do this calendar and we would do it as a big charity event. And so we put out a casting call into the Jewish community in San Francisco for dogs. We got 75 applicants and we chose 43 dogs. We set up a 2 photo shoot days. My friends let me use their basement as a studio. I rented all the equipment and I photographed 43 dogs. Okay. Then I spent months, like 3 months. I would like go to work and I'd come back and my second part-time job was just editing that calendar.
Oh
right?
my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, so I had like dog headshots. I had dog, like these beautiful pages. And so it became this huge thing. My friend Rachel, she did all the business side of it. We ordered these calendars. We set up at events, and then we had a giant party for everyone brought their dogs, and it was called the Nice Jewish Dogs, calendar. So everybody brought them, and it was just like a way to raise money. And we ended up raising, I think, like $20,000, and we donated it all to Canine Companions for Independence, which trains service animals.
That's awesome.
Or service dogs. It was so cool, and we learned so much about service dog training, and I got so good at animal photography in general. And it was just the craziest thing. I didn't pay myself a single cent, which I should have, honestly. We gave everything to charity. And I learned my lesson because that was so much work.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
But that is amazing that you did that. And that's a lot of money to raise, through calendars.
Yeah, I was really proud of it. And like people were emailing us like really angry about like, I don't know, stupid things. And they didn't realize we weren't like a full on like nonprofit or whatever. We were just two girls that were like,
you're just doing a fundraiser, really. And
grassroots, whatever. And so it was so funny. But we had all these sponsors come and bring stuff to the brewery, and it was so fun. So that was the craziest thing. I feel like it was the weirdest idea. It never would have gone over, I think, in the Midwest where I'm from.
Yeah.
But in California, people support my weird ideas. So that was one. I think I learned so much, and I had so much support, and it brought so much joy to so many people. And people were upset that I didn't do it. The second year was that was 2019, I think. Yeah. And so 2020, then, I moved to LA and there was COVID, and so we didn't do it again, but maybe one day.
That's really neat. Do you still do a lot of photography with animals?
Yeah, I've done like here and there. I've done like some foster kittens, and they're the cutest. And then I've thought about doing it as a side hustle, but my garage is really messy right now. But I do have the studio set up in my garage, so I have like the paper backdrops and stuff that I was using.
Like the seamless stuff.
Yeah. So I have 4 seamless backdrops, and I do a family holiday card every year, and we use that for that. But I haven't actually, since I had my baby, I just haven't had the energy to like set everything up again.
I mean, you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I love that though. That is see, like all these scenarios, never could have guessed what you would have said for that.
Yeah.
And I didn't prep you with that. Everyone else I gave like 24 hours notice.
Yeah, so. No, I do have a lot of weird things. Yeah. And like sometimes I like to share things that I haven't shared a lot because it's fun, you get bored of the same talking points over and over. Yeah.
Well, and then it's like all the things you think about throughout our lives, like you don't just think to bring it up or resurface it, but it's fun to think back on that stuff. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that with us.
I think that's the wackiest thing I've done.
I love that.
I think, I've done some other wacky stuff, but that was like the coolest, I think, or the most, fun.
Yeah. Well, so bringing it back just as we're in October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month, if there's kind of like a few main takeaways you want, not just people watching who have breast cancer or had it, but like just everyone, like family to know, in general, what knowledge should people take away about genetics and DNA?
Yeah, I think that first of all, it is, I know I said earlier that I don't believe in using family history as an indicator of who to not let have genetic testing, but it is really important to know your family history if you can, because there are definitely people that will come back negative on a genetic test but still have an increased risk because of their family history. So family history plus genetics are 2 tools that really go together when we can use both those things. So knowing your family history, asking your relatives about it, just being aware of it, knowing at what age each person was diagnosed, what type of cancer they were diagnosed with, is really important. So that's like and actually Thanksgiving is National Family Health History Day. So it's the day when, you're sitting down with your family, you can ask them these questions. I have a lot of content on how to talk to your family about this, but, and like you can put it in a binder or record it somewhere and share it with the family. And that is just, if possible, in the families where it's possible to ask those questions, knowing that is very helpful, because you'd be surprised how many people don't really know their family history because they've never asked.
Oh yeah.
And some people are going to be closed-lipped, but some people just didn't share, and they don't mind sharing. So I think knowing your family history, and then also the fact that genetics is another tool in that kind of risk understanding risk in that tool belt is good. And it's not just cancer. There's also inherited cardiovascular risk. There's inherited risk for rare diseases and for like inherited forms of epilepsy and autism and cerebral palsy and things that would affect a child or that you would see early on. And so genetic testing can really be used in so many areas of healthcare and medicine that people don't realize. Anytime there's a condition that's running in a family that more than one person has, we start to think about there being, some hereditary reason or cause behind that. So I think the biggest thing is, like, if you are worried about something that's running in your family, anything, doesn't have to be cancer related, to see a genetic counselor, because we work in a lot of different specialties. The second thing I want to say is that, breast cancer, I think, has the most awareness in the genetics community, but there are a lot of other cancers that actually have higher rates of findings, like ovarian cancer, for instance. We know about 1 in 4 ovarian cancers are associated with a hereditary risk.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah. That's why everyone with ovarian cancer, their first and second degree relatives will fit criteria, and at any age, because it is so high. So there's a paper I really love where they showed that they looked at all these women with ovarian cancer, and 24% of them had one of those inherited mutations. So that's really high. Pancreatic cancer is also higher. And then there's certain cancers, if you have it in your family, it's really important that, you get testing. And we do want to test with the person who's affected, because they're the most likely to carry something. And if they're negative, then there's not really a reason to test their relatives, because then we know it's either not detectable or it's not something that is inherited. So just talking to a genetic counselor to go through your family history and go through your questions, or just doing a general panel that's cancer and heart or cardiovascular and other common hereditary conditions is really helpful. And I think that's really going to be the future.
That's great. That's really interesting. And I think a lot of the common themes throughout anything, whether it's rare disease, cancer, any of the other things, is like, talk about it. Like whatever can get, if it is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month that prompts you to be like, do I have a mutation or that, then great, because then that might give you information on other things too. But just in general, like, for anyone listening or seeing, like, follow and pay attention to it, because it's not something to just be afraid of. Like, if you have the data and the information, there's really a lot powerful. We can do with it. A lot we can do,
A lot. And it depends on the cancer type too. So, like, for instance, there's a very common hereditary cancer syndrome called Lynch syndrome. And there's a lot of great evidence about the use of aspirin therapy in that condition and really lowering cancer risk. And that's a pretty simple intervention that we can really lower cancer risk with, right? And there's a whole bunch of examples of that depending on somebody's actual, gene mutation. And so, so knowing that there's so many things you can do. Again, like I said earlier, there's treatments that are going to work better for people whose cancers were from certain genetic changes. So knowing that, and it's very easy to do. So something that a lot of people will ask is how to find a genetic counselor, and you can self-refer, or you can ask your doctor for a referral, or you can go to findageneticcounselor.com and you can find one near you. And I'm also available at malibugenetics.com. So that's my private practice.
Awesome. Where else can everyone find you?
So Dena DNA. So that's DENA.DNA on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm now newly on YouTube. And hopefully more. So in social media is in general. I'm all over.
And I mean, I started following you before we ended up connecting. And I mean, it really is, I appreciate so much the amount of effort you go through to make content.
Thank you.
That, even if it's something that someone's not on a daily basis or has like a direct need, right now, or they don't have, whatever it might be, following along and understanding it, I think, is so important. And everyone can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting because I think, like, I have friends who have followed me for a long time, and they, like, kind of, like, some of my stuff goes in one ear and out the other a little bit. But then as soon as they have a friend that's been diagnosed, or they've been diagnosed, or they have a scare or whatever, then all of a sudden I'm getting messages from them like, oh my God, I I can't believe how valuable this information is. And they like really give me appreciation because, yeah, it's not something you're like typically thinking about, right? And I try to make my content really relatable. So that's why I talk about more than just cancer genetics. I'm talking about just genetics in general and like healthcare. I'm really moving towards more like healthcare innovation and preventative medicines for healthy people, which I think a lot more people are into, and like wellness. But yeah, I think that once somebody goes down that path, or it has somebody related to them that is going down that path, then they really start to recognize the value of, I guess, what I'm saying. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because I'm like trying to pull people in, but also understand that it's not always going to be possible with everyone.
And not everything's a one size fits all.
Exactly.
Like you just mentioned about like aspirin being potentially really helpful for one specific thing, but it could be really bad for another thing.
Exactly.
And so that's where it's so helpful to have voices like yours in the health and wellness space, because, you know, I'm always skeptical if anything's like, this is for everyone, or this is the way you should eat. There's just no way. Like, I've learned more than ever having cancer how unique and different we are.
Yeah. And each cancer, they say, is a different disease, right? Everyone's cancer is so unique to them because of all the things you were talking about, all the data points and the differences. Exactly. And there's so much misinformation out there. And typically, like, if someone's selling a supplement, if someone's telling you have a problem and then selling a supplement to that problem, like, you should definitely be, you know, weary.
Definitely be wary. And you know, something recently I talked with my oncology dietitian is like, you know, the supplements act differently than the food, right? So like, I was having a lot of inflammation on my last treatment, and, you know, everyone's like, are you taking turmeric supplements and all this stuff? And I asked about it, and they were like, actually, this was a conversation I had with Dr. Z from Cancer Nutrition HQ. If you follow her, she's awesome. And she was saying, like, actually, the supplements are so concentrated and unregulated, so you could end up with too much.
Yes.
And it can really affect your liver. Yeah. Which is so interesting because I've had more cancer in my liver than I had in my breast. So like, to think of, you know, but there's a difference between eating turmeric and there are other things that might work. It's just, we're all different. Yeah. And knowing the right things.
And our genetics are different, so the way that we metabolize things are different. So it's a whole nother level, you know?
And it's just too much for an individual. I mean, think about how many years of schooling you've done, research, practice in the real world. So I've found that, you know, putting together your team of experts is so critical. Like,
Absolutely.
I just signed off on my clinical trial I'm starting this morning.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And it combines Herceptin, which is already an amazing drug, with a new targeted therapy. So none of it is actually chemo. So it's so targeted that the side effects, you know, assuming it will work, the side effects would be like barely anything.
That's great.
All these pieces. But I feel like we were going through, you know, this huge stack because you have to sign. And at any point you can leave a clinical trial. It's not like anything binding. But I would have probably been so like confused or wanted to run it by so many people if I didn't really like trust and
totally.
And I already understand so much because my care team has educated me along the way. Yeah. And so I just am like, we can't be experts in everything, but identifying the people that we trust, you know, because none of us know 100% of the answers.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why you have to really pool knowledge for all the people that you respect and trust. Yeah. And sometimes you'll have two people saying different things and you'll kind of get a gut instinct of, you know, who you're going to listen to.
Yeah. We were already who I respect and trust when it comes to genetic counseling.
Thank you.
Now you're also who I respect and trust when it comes to butterflies and animal photography.
Yay!
So I love that.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, this was so fun. I appreciate you doing this so much. I'm definitely going to follow up on some of those pieces, like you mentioned, of some of the guides and things that you have, so we can maybe get some of that out to our audience and community this month too. But thank you. Let's just keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate it.
You too.